So today I'm going to show you how to paint a variety of skies. We're going to keep it simple today. We're concentrating on the skies, and then I'm going to show you how to paint some different little landscapes that are very simple on top of the skies that we create. Grab your materials. I'm going to go over them in the next chapter here, and then we can get started. So the materials we're going to be using is, of course, watercolor paper, our palette and paints, 2 jars of water. We're going to use some tissue, Kleenex. We're going to use our spray bottles, preferably if you have one that does misting, and then those are the ones that you can get anywhere. And then if you have a spray bottle that'll do kind of like a dot pattern, it's always helpful. We might use some salt. We might use some masking fluid. We might use some white paint of some sort. I have this one here, that's Aqua Cover by Creative Marks. That's called liquid watercolor paper, and it's designed to cover Arches bright white paper, which is what I paint on. But don't worry about it. Any kind of a white watercolor paint you have, or gouache, or water soluble ink, or if you don't have any, that's also fine, because you can get the same result or similar result with using the masking fluid. And then we are going to use Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. If you have that lying around in your watercolor tool, or maybe out in your cleaning supplies, we might use that for lifting out some clouds or softening some edges. And you can also use, instead, you can also use some cotton pads. Like a lot of you ladies, you probably have that maybe in your bathroom for, you use them for taking off makeup and stuff like that. You could actually also use just a little sponge. So there's many ways of using different tools. And a toothbrush for splattering might come in handy. Old toothbrush, not the one you brush your teeth with. Just being funny here. We might use some credit cards or plastic cards or room keys or whatever you have, or a palette knife. These two things, they do basically the same. It's if we're going to scrape out something maybe in the foreground. So it's not so much for the sky, it's just if we want to put a little foreground on, then these here would come in handy. We could also think of using a white gel pen. And we have our brushes here. I'm going to use a couple of these big ones just to get the water on, whatever you have. And here's my big number 30 round. I have a number 12 and a number 8 round. And then I have my usual dagger brush. And then I have a rigger brush. I don't know, that's again would probably be more for the foreground. And then I have this stiff hog hair brush. It's actually one of Sterling Edwards' brushes. If you've seen any of my other watercolor videos, you might have seen me use this brush or go over this brush. It has stiff hog hair, so they're very stiff, so that is also great for splattering. And it can also be used to lift out and softening edges with. So I grabbed that one since I have it. And then we might need an X-Acto knife. But a lot of this is, it's not necessary. I just want to show you how I can use all these different tools to create different effects in the sky. So grab your stuff and let's get started. So let's grab a piece of watercolor paper. And actually, I didn't mention that in my materials. I'm actually using the back sides of old watercolor paintings. And if you have some old paintings where, the backside is fairly clean, you can see there's a little bit, paint from the front on the backside here, but I'm not going to worry about that because I think this is a wonderful exercise, especially for those of you that are fairly new to watercolor. That way, I think if you use the backside of an old painting, I think that might free you up so you don't feel so precious about your paper. So for the next sky, we'll still have a nice blue sky, but now it's that late afternoon where the sky is beginning to get that very, very light pinkish tinge as the sun is moving down towards the horizon. And typically, especially in the winter, you see that a lot. So that's the type of sky I want to do this time. So we can get some more of our cobalt out, and then this time I'm going to get a little bit of my French ultramarine blue. Need some more water. French ultramarine blue, I don't know if you noticed that, and cobalt to a certain degree also. They kind of dry harder than a lot of the other colors. So here you can you see French ultramarine blue? Can you see how it's a more of a purpley blue when I put it in here with the other two blues? Can you see the difference? And instead of using the peacock blue, I think I'm going to jump up and use a little bit of the Antwerp, because it's a darker color, but it still has that little bit of a turquoisey shade to it. It's just darker than the peacock. So I want to get a little bit of that in, because as I'm saying now, it's the later afternoon, so the sky will start looking a little bit darker. And then we're going to go in and get a little bit of a pink, and I'm going to use Opera Rose. Now if you don't have Opera Rose, or you don't like to paint with Opera Rose, because it is a little bit more fugitive than the other colors I'm painting with, you could totally use a quinacridone rose or permanent rose. I do have permanent rose there, but I like the Opera Rose, so I'm just going to use it. Alright, so we're going to do the exact same thing. Grab our bigger brush that will hold a lot of water, and we're going to wet almost the whole page, because I don't want to have any hard lines where the color fades out, because that gives me many more options of what kind of a landscape I want to paint, to go with the sky. So I'm going to go almost the whole way down and make sure I didn't miss any spots. And then you can see the same thing is happening like it did earlier. Things starts bubbling up, and all we need to do is turn it over and spray a little water on the back, and that's going to relax it in just a little bit there. Alright, and then I don't know if I pointed that out, but I'm using my bigger brush for the sky, because I want everything to be smooth for these types of skies. So a bigger brush is better. So now I'm putting those blues in, and they're just mixing nicely here in the palette, so that's great. And make sure you get a lot of pigment up there on the top, and then as we're moving down, it gets lighter, and you have to get all this done while it's still wet. I'm going to rinse out my brush, and then this time I'm just going to grab a little bit of that pink, dab, 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 and I'm going to get a little bit of that pink glow in, and you can see it gets more lavender as we move up, and I want to have a little bit of that lavender color up in the sky there, and it gets pinker as we go down. So that's a nice cold winter day is what it looks like to me. And it can be either early morning or late afternoon as the light is beginning to fade away. And you want to make sure, didn't say that on the first one, if you have any water puddling around on the edges here of your watercolor paper, make sure you just get rid of that. And you can use gravity to help the colors mix and mingle a little bit as needed. And then we can put this one aside and wait for that to dry. Landscape. I'm going to use my little stiff hog hair brush, and I just dip it in water, And then I'm going to just run it across straight up here and just run it across, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, like this, with water. I don't know if you can see it. And then I'm going to dip my brush into some of this blue that I use for the sky, maybe a little bit more of the peacock blue here, and then I'm going to do the same thing. And I can't really see where the water is, but I'm just going to, so some places I'm going to hit wet and some places I'm going to hit dry. And then I'm going to just drag it across like that. And that's going to be maybe a little water running through the frozen snow. I'm going to dab my brush and get a little bit of the Antwerp on to get a few little variations in the color. I'm just dabbing it in like this, and it has to be horizontal, because then this is snow, a little bit of land that's, you know, on the other side. There's snow banks on that side and snow banks on this side. And I'm going to go in here. Just shaping that snow bank. There. There's that. And you really don't want to fiddle with it too long. That's the hardest thing, stopping when you're ahead. Yeah. So there's that. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'm just going to go in and do a few little things once that's dry to create some feeling of snow, and maybe we'll have a little vegetation going up. So now that my little stream has dried, I have to get in there and then kind of split the landscape up a little bit. And I don't want to cover up all my beautiful glow of that very, very soft pink there. But I do need to build up my foreground and my middle ground. So I'm putting a little bit of water in like that. Can you see it? Oh, yeah, I think you can probably see it like that. All right, and I'm gonna build myself a lavender gray color with some of the cobalt blue, a little bit of peacock blue, and the opera rose, and then I put just a hint of the burnt sienna in to gray it down a little bit. And I want to keep it quite light. So I'm just going to go in like this here. There. And I want to do just like little sprinkles. And let's see what we can do. Some little tree shapes here. I want to keep them quite light at this point. I can always darken right now. Just want to keep them light. And put a little bit more color in. Vary the color a little bit. And I'm sorry I can't talk too much when I'm doing this. Maybe I should do a voiceover. I don't know, I just don't really like voiceovers myself. I prefer when people are just talking as they are going, but I know in certain circumstances like this one here, it can be really hard, because it's much easier actually when I'm painting, you know, and I kind of know what I'm doing here. It's like I'm watching what's happening on the paper and trying to react to it. So I really have to be in the moment. So that's why it's hard to talk sometimes when I'm doing these kinds of things. And so here I'm just, you know, I'm forming the ridge by painting what's behind it. And I want to make sure that I don't cover up all that pink. So that pink is kind of showing through. And I'm beginning to like what I see here. See that? So now we have that going down. There's like a slope going down. And let's see here. Maybe we need to just fine tune it a little bit. Great. I think like that. Better. There's that. And this one needs to be fixed a little bit. Yeah. And then here on the other side, we need to also create and that's actually what I want to do, I think. You know what I want to do? I want to put a little salt inside there. I'm going to try and put a little bit of salt in there. I don't know if it's too late, because I think that would be awesome to have a little salt action there. All right. And we'll see how much I get out of that. I might not get very much out of it. And then I have this other slope here, and that's in front, so the trees here will be a little bit further forward, and that means they'll be a little bit taller and also maybe a little bit darker. So I just put a little bit of water in like that, so I have a little beginning of my trees. And I think I want to use a little bit more of that peacock. Still grayed down a little bit. Can't really see where I put that. Here? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to give myself that little ridge there. Okay. And it would be fun to put a little purple in between. And I'm going to give it a little bit more of a whiff like that, and take some of that extra moisture up. And let's see. So now we can go up further. And this is one of those, if you had too much coffee, it's perfect. Of course, you need to have that kind of like a nervous movement. And here I'm just going to spritz in a little bit more, because I want to make sure that I get some of that fuzziness there. There we have it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And again, you know, I want to make sure that I don't cover up all that pink. I want to have that shining through in between these evergreens. I'm going to give these just a few of those little sparklies there. And out here, I'm going to go up further. And again, let's do a little bit of spritzing up here. you know, they're in the background, so I don't want them, that's why I don't want them to be too hard edged. And here I can go up, really up. Let's make sure that you can see what I'm doing here. And actually, before it dries on me here, make sure I put some salt on so I get some of that salt action. That's such a good method to get some kind of frosty look on these trees. I like to have some of that pink in. Already ran out of that. And there we have it. Need to have it a little bit darker there. Grade down a little bit. And now better make sure that I have it so that it looks like there's the right support for these evergreens, so it's not all horizontal and not all vertical, so that your eye can kind of connect the shapes. And then let's throw some salt at it and cross our fingers. But can you see, you still have that lovely shine. We have that coming out, and then we just got to work a little bit with our foreground here. Split that up a little bit. I think I want a round brush for that. Let's grab some more of that. And now we need to find a good shadow color. Okay. So let's start here. And right away, we're gonna wet this. And there is the first ridge. Little snowbank. Can you see that? All right, we'll do one more. Just going to use this big brush. And that's going to go like that. And then I'm going to go in here, flip it around so I don't lay my hand into wet paint. And this is a little bit more purpley, which is fine. I want to, have a little bit of a variation in the shadow color. So go forward here. There's that. There. It doesn't have to be so distinct. And I want to pick out a little bit of highlight on some of these bumps here. There. And then there'll be a little bit of shadow. Vary the color again. And then I'm going to just pull that out like that. Can you see how we now have forms on this little foreground? And then I want to put a little shadow, deeper shadow down here. Just like that. And then I'm going to let it just bleed out. There. It's not so distinct. Okay, that's good. And then we're just going to do something similar on the other side. Let's do that a little cooler. More blue. Lots of water, because we still want it to read like snow. And then here, let's do like that. And lift out just a little bit of a highlight on the top part, just a little bit like that. Yeah. And then we can go in and do a couple more separations. It'll be a little bit lighter like that. Let's do another one. This one here. And there's a little bit of shadow down at the bottom. There. And then just a little bit on this one. And we can just cast a little shadow in here. There we have it. Okay. So there's a nice, very wintry landscape with that sky that we created with the pink glow. And we have a little bit of that. The same colors is reflected in the snow. And it's not completely dry, so we're gonna wait until it's completely dry, then we can dust this salt off. And it did give me a little bit of texture, not like a whole lot, but I think fine enough for this little landscape. And you know, we could put in some little twigs and things like that in a couple of places in the foreground if we wanted to. I'm just going to show you. These are not going to be like, you know, super perfect landscapes by any stretch of the imagination. It's just to give you ideas and show you the methods, and then you can, you know, do it more detailed manner. So let's go in here and see if we can see. You can go in and you can put some little, you know, twigs and stuff sticking out of the snow. And again, I always am a fan of them just kind of spritzing in a little bit of water so I can get some of those fuzzy things. I think they look so good, especially for a snowy landscape. So there's a little bit of that going on, and there can be a couple more sticking up here. They won't be as big as these here because, you know, they are further away. And then we can have some smaller ones over here. And again, give them a little bit of a spritz and maybe a little bit of a dab so they're not so prominent because they're further away. A couple little ones there. And then what you want to do is you want to give them a hint. It doesn't have to be much, just a little bit of a hint of a shadow where they're coming out of the snow. So we can give them a little bit more shadow. And since this is a low light, I'm not gonna, you can also cast some, you know, little shadows across the snow, but not too much here because, you know, it's waning light, so you won't have any strong shadows. If you want to say that it's a super sunny day, that's when you cast really strong shadows. But here, just a little something like that. And we'll call that done. So that concludes our lesson today on painting skies in watercolor. I hope you had fun. And in the meantime, wishing you happy painting, stay creative, stay positive, and I'll see you soon.